People who've bought flats in blocks that have the kind of dangerous cladding that was used on Grenfell Tower have set up a national campaign now to try to make sure they don't have to pay to make their own homes safe. The government's already said that the companies who built and run these private blocks should be the ones to pay for any dangerous cladding to be removed. But they haven't all agreed to do it. Our reporter Bob Walker has been to meet Will Martin. He's set up the new campaign. He bought a flat in Sheffield, Leasehold.
So currently we're outside the Metis building, built in 2005. There's around about 113 flats in this rather modern building. It's got a mixture of brick and cladding and has quite a few balconies on most of the properties I think here have got their own balcony. So the cladding I think predominantly is on the building for an aesthetic purpose. It goes up the corners of the building and then right at the top, the final two levels, it entirely encompasses the top of the building. So this is the main foyer. We're quite lucky we have our own concierge who works working hours. Following on from Grenfell, we were asked to have a fire patrol watch, and that operates out of working hours.
Who's on fire watch then? Is it a resident?
Our management company have put in place a person who regularly comes into the building to check that, and it's funded by ourselves through our service charge. And that's part of the deal for keeping the building open.
Doors closing. Lift going up. 5th floor.
Following on from Grenfell, these were the waste refuges where we used to dump our waste, and every morning there'd be someone that came around and collected them. Another proviso that this building could keep operating was that these were no longer able to be used because they would present a fire hazard if waste is sat there.
So where do you put your rubbish now?
We have a long trek downstairs to the car park where we have our recycle plant. This is home. Come on in. I scrimped and saved for many, many years to purchase it. I originally was based in London and there was no way that I was ever going to be able to buy there. And so 4 years ago I made the move and bit the bullet, and this is where I ended up. I really didn't think that a building this modern would have such a dangerous thing on the side of the building. For several weeks I said, no, this can't be right, they must have got this wrong. Our story, unfortunately, is not a rare story, it's a common story across the country. This week, myself and two other leaseholders in different tower blocks in London have come together and formed a Cladding Action Group, and we're calling on the 130 properties in the UK that have been identified as having this dangerous cladding on to come together and unite and go to the government and say that enough is enough, and we will not be made to pay for the mistakes that the government and the developers of these buildings have made. I'm certainly not responsible for cladding that was put onto a building when I was still in school.
Sadly, isn't this just a case of caveat emptor, buyer beware?
I think you could argue that. I think there are certain things that when you buy a property you have to be aware there's going to be some problems that come with properties. But this is a problem that is beyond this building. It's a problem nationwide that is so astronomical in size that you cannot ask an individual leaseholder to foot the bill to repair this work.
According to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, by the end of last month, dangerous cladding had been replaced on 38 privately owned buildings and 41 within the social housing sector. Work is still required at 354 other locations, including 163 private residential buildings. Laura is another leaseholder living in the Metis flats near Sheffield city centre.
I know we have fire safety policies and stuff here, but I mean, I've even taken the ridiculous precautions of buying rope and stuff so I can try and escape from the building by other means. It's just so difficult because if I want to do anything, I'm not in a position where I can sell my flat, really. I really hope that the government will support ordinary working people. I imagine lots of these flats have been brought by young people, and not only did we have to contend with so many other factors when you know, we graduated, got jobs and stuff, we're now bearing the brunt of bad building legislation, which just seems hugely unfair.
In a statement, the ministry said nothing was more important than ensuring people were safe in their homes. Progress had been made, but more needed to be done, with building owners and developers replacing dangerous cladding quickly. And a spokesman added leaseholders must be protected from those costs. Paul Bloomfield, the Sheffield Central MP, speaking during a debate on fire safety, called on the government to ensure residents weren't made to pay.
If you buy a dishwasher and there's a fire risk involved in it, it's found to be faulty, it's safety first. The product is recalled and the manufacturer takes responsibility. Now, if that's good enough for the domestic products, why is it not good enough for the homes that house them? I recognise that some developers and freeholders are accepting responsibility, but others aren't. And so the government needs to act. We need first to make the building safe, and we need to make sure that those individual residents who own the flats don't foot the bill. The government should be holding the developers and freeholders to account. And if the law isn't up to the task now, then we need to change the law.
The freehold of the Metis flats is held by a company called Adriatic. In a statement, a spokesman said though it wasn't responsible for the management of the building, it did take its responsibility as the overall steward very seriously. Adriatic said it was committed to working with all stakeholders to ensure that those responsible for putting the cladding there in the first place were the ones who paid for it to be replaced. The company is backing moves to try to recover the cost through an insurance claim against the developers. But until there's some clarity, Will Martin and others from the newly formed UK Cladding Action Group say they're trapped.
We are in a limbo land. We have no direction about where we're going. I can't make plans with my life because the banks are saying we don't want to lend on this building, we don't want to remortgage, and you can't sell your property. I'd quite like to think that in a few years' time I could move on and start a life elsewhere. I want to apply for jobs in Manchester, but as it stands, I'm stuck here with absolutely no indication of when this nightmare is going to end.
Will Martin speaking to Bob Walker.